What's up, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Innovation Nation, where we speak to founders and CEOs and help entrepreneurs to make the first step or the next big leap in their entrepreneurial journey. Today, we have Mr. Elias Dupuis with us. Elias is an entrepreneur for almost 13 years. He's also a mentor. He is the co-founder of 365 MMP and currently the founder and CEO of his new brand, Awesome Cocoa. Elias is here today to really walk us through the thinking process of starting, implementing, and keeping sustainable your business idea. One of the main things that entrepreneurs need in order to be successful is a roadmap, a plan, a guide to really help them along that path. So today, Elias will be helping us by getting into the mind of an entrepreneur. Elias, thank you very much for coming on.
Thanks for having me, Kevin. I'm really excited to be on Innovation Nation. I'm super proud of what you've been doing, and I'm excited for the conversation.
Appreciate it, Elias. Thank you very much. It's definitely something that we have been talking about. I know we have so many different conversations about business practices, what's good, what's bad, what's new. And I think it's important that we can shed light on that discussion for the benefit of others. So
I feel like you and I have had maybe 15 or 20 conversations that would have made fantastic podcast episodes, one way or the other.
there's a lot more content to produce. And I really believe that you will be on the show again in the near
Yeah,
future for
and
sure.
their future seasons. You know what I mean? We'll save some for later.
Yeah,
Okay.
save some for later. All right, brother. Well, first of all, thank you very much again for coming on. And like I mentioned in the intro, I really want to be able to have the discussion about the thought process of getting into entrepreneurship, understanding what it takes to start a company, and ultimately, in the end, how to make it sustainable and profitable. So, tell me about what was the first business that you wanted to get into, the first business idea that you had, and how did you come along that, and how did you think that it was even worth doing in the first place?
So I was probably always going to be an entrepreneur because it's what my father did, and I got to witness firsthand what it meant to run your own schedule, um, the sort of freedom that allowed my father to have, right, and the sort of independence to be who you want to be, to say what you want to say, to think what you want to think what you want to think. And one of the things my parents really grew me up to do was to be very expressive and to think on my own, right, to think for myself. And I felt like entrepreneurship was kind of the vehicle that was going to get me to be able to do that throughout my entire life. So um, my first business really started as a very simple conversation between me and my cousin, Tridel Edwin. We were talking about we were at university. We were having a conversation about what it was we were going to do when we went back home and what that was going to be like. And what we realized is that the more we spoke, the more sort of overlap we found that we had in our own plans, right? So that was the sort of genesis of like where the idea came from to do something together. He wanted to do a graphic design and photography business. I wanted to do a video production house. That was my dream. That was what I really wanted to do. And we decided, how about we join forces and take it on together. And it was probably one of the best decisions I've ever made in my life. But that really became, um, the kernel that kind of sprung into this business. Um, One of the things that was really valuable was, you know, even in the name, like we called it 365 for multiple reasons. We called it, well, first Dominica, because 365 rivers, right? Whether it's true or not, that's a whole other story. But but it's a tagline that's associated with Dominica, and we wanted the name to say something about where we were from and who we were. But also it's about being on 365 days a year, right? It's every single day you have to wake up in the morning and decide that you're going to find a way to make it. There are no Saturdays, there are no holidays. Those don't exist when you're just starting business. So we were willing to really put in that effort 365 days a year, um, to make this project work.
So that entrepreneurship does run in your family, and I
Hmm.
think seeing some of that freedom that your father as an entrepreneur had was very attractive. I imagine, but I don't think that's necessarily how it is in practice, right? So there's a lot of things that you have to do, right, in order
No, no.
to earn
Hey,
that freedom.
I'm not suggesting that the freedom comes, inherently, right? The freedom
Hmm.
doesn't come with the with the package. Like, hey, here's an entrepreneur starter kit. The freedom comes
Hmm.
free. No, the freedom is
Yeah.
definitely sold separately, but you you have to be willing to put in the work and put in the effort to make that happen. That was the whole part of why the 365 was important for me, because it was, we're not going to get jobs, right? We're not going to do anything else. We're going to dedicate ourselves to this business, and we're going to dedicate ourselves to making sure that this business works. And what that meant for us was, I had a post-it note on my laptop back in the day that had a breakdown of all the money I had. Going into a particular weekend, it was $9.77. I counted out all of my little coins that I had in a jar. It was $9.77. I bought flour and I bought flour and lentils, and for the first
Yeah.
time, I made dumpling to cook. Right, like, that was
You
the
rough
sort of
boy.
dedication. That was the sort of dedication that we were on, which is like, we're going to make this work. We're going to give it everything that we have. We're going to go full bore. I think it takes this particular type of personality to even, one, be willing to submit yourself to that, because there's a lot of suffering and there's a lot of grind. But I think the end result for me was never really about the money, or or like the notoriety or anything like that. It was really more about the freedom and being able to, like I said, think and do whatever it is that I want to do.
Mhm. The ability to take on risk, and be less risk averse is
Hmm.
definitely one of the traits or personalities needed to be an entrepreneur. There is a saying that calm seas never made a good sailor, right? So
Facts.
while we spoke about it, what do you think are some of the base skills and personality traits that you think that they need now in order to have the confidence to make that first step?
Right. So, like Jim Rohn says, it's all risky, right? Everything's risky, but but the truth is, you're going to have a pretty high risk tolerance, and that means that you're going to, and that's not just related to like loans and sort of borrowing money and taking on that, like, actual risk, like what we typically can quantify as risk, because we know what our risk is month on month. But
Yeah.
there's a massive risk in, your client may not pay, right? Or worse, your client may not pay on time. It's one thing if they don't pay and they never pay. It's a completely different thing if they don't pay on time, because that then sets you back in a pretty significant way. It's there's the risk of, you know of all of it kind of going to zero, which is a, 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 a clear and present risk that we live with almost on a day to day basis. You feel like, well, we did well last month, yeah, but this month is March and it's Lent and there's no real business, right? And you're gonna have to go through a bit of a grind. You're gonna have to really tighten up. Um, there's a there's a ton of risk that comes with whether or not, if you're in a partnership, is that partnership going to work out, right? That's very much like a marriage, right? And
Mhm.
it's a situation where there has to be a lot of respect and a lot of, but there's going to be some fighting, there's going to be some infighting, there's going to be some issues, and if that breaks up, does that then mean that your business is not going to work, that what you've dedicated so much time and effort into is not going to work? There's the risk of, is your product going to fit the market? Is your product going to be timed properly, like to hit the market? Are you going to be able to actually attract the kind of attention that you want to attract? Are you going to be able to, um, attract the kind of money that you want for your product, right? In exchange for your product. All of those are risks that you have to work through, and deal with on a day-to-day basis. So you certainly have to have a tolerance for that kind of risk. Um, that is, is very different from getting to the 28th of the month and running out of money and feeling like, all right, well, in 2 or 3 days, my employer has to pay me, right? That's his requirement. It's a different thing when you're short of money and it's the 28th of the month and you have your bills to pay at the end of the month, that you've been working, slaving away for 2 or 3 weeks on a couple of projects, and you're wondering, is my client going to pay me within the next 2 or 3 days, or am I going to have to wait
Yeah.
14 days for that
Yeah.
for that invoice
Yeah.
for them to process that invoice?
Yeah.
Um,
That kind of brings up a good point about the regularity, the cash flow, the cushion. So
mhm,
as an employee, you're working for somebody else, there's an expectation of your salary at the end of the month. Yeah, once
correct.
you continue to do what you do, and in many cases bare minimum, right? But as an entrepreneur, on the other side, there are going to be months where you don't get paid, and they're
There's
gonna
going
be
to be
months when
Lent.
you get, yeah, there's gonna be
There's going to
less,
be
but then but
listen,
then also there's gonna be carnival, right? And
that's
you're
facts.
gonna make
That's
money
facts.
for the 2 or 3 months that you were not able to get that. So it's definitely a push and pull, give and take,
Yeah.
and being able to balance that and balance your expectations is really something that's very important. Quick question though. On one of the episodes, one of our past episodes, we spoke about the emotional toll that having a business, as being an entrepreneur can be. How do these risks and challenges coming up, which is part of the next question? How do these risks and challenges that you experience as an entrepreneur, contribute to your mental and emotional well-being?
Well, like to be honest, that's the part that you don't hear a lot of people talking about, and it's really a part that I have not really spoken a lot about. But I'm happy that you asked the question. Um, my business partner and I at the time dealt with our mothers consistently telling us that we should like literally give this up and go get a job, and that's a very difficult thing because the truth is, when we were short of cash, who do we have to turn to but our mothers, right?
Yeah. It's time for you to
And
get a real job, Elias.
I'll be very honest with you. One of the greatest days of my life is when we were up for an award in Barbados, Caribbean Technology Entrepreneur of the Year, and we had no idea that we were going to win it. We were not told ahead of time or anything. They announced it like at the moment, and my mother was sitting right next to me in the dinner, and I'm like, you see, I literally turned to her and I told her, I told you, I told you, right?
Yeah, good job holding out.
I told you we could definitely make a go of this, but like that's a very difficult thing to deal with, right? That's a really tough thing to um to struggle with. It's where the person who's giving you the best advice, like most of your life, right, about who to date and how to live your life, and they've been so responsible for you, are they're now telling you that this is not a sensible path for you to go down, and
Yeah,
you can see the freedom at the end of the tunnel. They're just not really conditioned that way, right?
yeah,
And then now I have a different challenge, which is I have a wife, right? And it's I'll tell anybody. Um, that's a difficult thing to deal with and to be in entrepreneurship as heavily as I was at the time, um, while having somebody who's dependent on you to pull your share. Right. This is not a you don't owe your mother anything, but you definitely owe your wife to like show up and pay the
yeah.
bills
She
on
didn't
time.
sign up for
Right.
this.
That's
That's for sure.
he should need to set up for that. So it's sort of a different and there's a massive emotional toll to that. Like you want to go full bore and make sure that you're all in. But then being put in those sort of situations just because it is sort of inherently risky, that presents a massive challenge to a lot of your other interpersonal relationships, right? Your like I say, your relationship with your parents, your relationship with your spouse, and then even your relationship with your partner, with your actual business partner, right? So did he do what he was supposed to do when he was supposed to do it? Did I do what I was supposed to do when I was supposed to do it, so that we could make sure that there's cash flow regularly coming in? can you actually take a day off, right? Can you actually get your like take a day off and get your mind right? Yeah, but what does that mean 2 weeks from now? Are we gonna get paid or are we not gonna get paid? Because then we have employees and we have responsibilities and there's things to do.
Okay.
So those are the sort of challenges that you come upon on a fairly regular basis.
So, okay, before I move on to the next section, I want to round it off with just some information because something you mentioned struck to me, and it's something that's been happening recently. The idea of having your profit and loss, your expenses and your profits coming in, and cash flow. So, just for the benefit of our viewers, can you draw a difference between the two and tell us why which one is important? Well, they're both important, but why
Mhm.
is cash flow important as opposed to a profit and loss?
But in my opinion, I think cash flow is significantly more important than most other things, right? You can break even, you can even operate at a decent loss if your cash flow is right, for quite a while, right? The struggle is that even when you're profitable, if you're profitable on every item that you sell, if the cash flow is not quite what the cash flow needs to be just to keep the business running, you're still gonna struggle, right? If you're selling one product a week when you need to sell, you know, five, because you need that kind of cash flow, that kind of turnover. Even if you're profitable on the individual products that you're selling, that's not super useful. I talk a lot about the idea of persons who sell eggs in our country. Eggs are one of the most like a really high volume business, really, really high volume business, but most people lose money selling eggs. And the reason that most people lose money selling eggs is that the cost of an egg, the cost to produce a single egg in this country, it's just costs just a little more than what you can sell an egg for in this country. And when you're selling a tray of eggs at a time, right? And if you think about it, you can keep running that business for a pretty long time just because the cash flow is coming in, right? Without really recognizing that every day I'm just losing a little bit of money. So often the cash flow is definitely, in my opinion, most important, but you also have to be careful that you're not being deceived by what the cash flow is. Because that kind of turnover can fool you into thinking that you're doing good business and making good money, when in reality, the overall goal of the business is to make profit, and you're not really making profit, right? Um, I loved what we did at the time. We were really focused on weddings. Weddings are a high margin product generally, but obviously it's something that people do once in their life, if they get it right,
If you do it
right?
right,
If they
for
get it right,
sure.
it's something that they do once. So it's not a very repeatable product. Um, and what you would prefer is, or what we really focused on was like targeting the bridesmaids. Like we have to make sure that the bridesmaid thinks that the photos are incredible, such that when she has to make a decision on who the photographer is, and that's something that pays forward all the time, and that ensures your cash flow moving forward. But like I said, the most the that becomes the most important thing. But it is very critical to make sure that you're keeping your eye on what your profit and your loss are. I would say down to the individual product that you're selling. So on a wedding, it's fairly easy, right? So it's a big package, high ticket item, solid margins on it. If you're selling ice pop, the margin might are significantly smaller, but you have to make sure that on every single ice pop you sell, you're making a profit.
um,
Right.
in your for you, and I guess in your entrepreneurial journey, like how useful has a strategy been for you, and what kind of strategies are you creating up front?
So like I said, one of the things that we did was we really focused very heavily on weddings, and that was part of our strategy. Right. That was the strategic um, way that we wanted to position ourselves within the market. Because obviously, as photographers, as graphic designers, etc., there are many areas that you can kind of find yourself in. Right. There's events, which is very, very much the low end. There's personal photo shoots and individual photo shoots, and yes, everybody does have a birthday, so there's an opportunity for you to make money off of pretty much everybody. You can market to a lot of people, but then that high ticket, high margin item comes from you know selling directly to brides. These are people who are emotional. They're not necessarily the ones coming out of pocket to pay the money. So there's an opportunity to sell them on. And then they also, everybody wants their wedding to be incredible, right? They want their wedding to be beautiful, even when it's modest. Like mine was 50 people, but it was really, really nice, right? It looked great. And it looked great in photos. So everybody wants that, right? So once you understand the underlying motivation behind how exactly that's done, then that has to play into what your strategy becomes. So the strategy becomes, when we engage with the couple, we're engaging with the bride, right? Obviously that plays into the plan, but these are the strategic overall
Yeah.
items. We're engaging with the bride. We're not talking to the groom because it's not his wedding; it's her wedding,
Yeah, he
right?
don't worry
She's the
about that.
boss.
Whatever she says goes. If
There
she
you go.
says that, then I'll go with it. Yeah, for sure.
Precisely. And he'll find the money, right? Don't, don't stress about the money. He'll find the money. And he wants to make her happy, right? So it's her wedding. That's one. Um, and you really sort of build it around what it is that she wants, that she envisions for herself. So that was the overall strategic plan with regards to like weddings. Then there was the option of like, okay, how are we making sure that we're getting not just one high ticket item or one high ticket item, but we're getting good margins on the other things that we're doing, right? Given that this is the strategy that we're targeting the bride, okay, so does she want uplights? Does she need a sound system? Does she need to book a DJ? How can we remove all of these problems from her life by allowing her to book everything through us, right? That becomes the overall strategy. The plan then breaks down into, okay, these are our action items. We gotta contact a DJ, a specific DJ that we know is going to work really well for this bride, right? That we get to understand a little bit about her. We get to understand what it is that she might like. Does she want to hire? And does she have an MC? Does she have a cousin that's going to be the MC? Right? Then okay, well I can hire a DJ that doesn't really talk. Right? If she doesn't, then I gotta hire a DJ who can double as both a DJ and an MC. Right? But they're booking my sound system. They're booking my our lights. They're booking our all of these other items that we had that were available, and those things only cost us say an hour or so to set up, and they're working throughout the night. So that means we're making money throughout the entire wedding. On top of the fact that we're already providing all of the photography, videography, etc. So you're taking one high margin, high ticket item and turning that into multiple high margin sales. So that was a significant part of like our strategy to make sure that, again, back to what we just said before, the cash flow was right. That the cash flow was right.
So that's one thing. To make the plan and the strategy is one thing, especially the strategy. Because, like we mentioned
Hmm.
before, the strategy is not a guarantee. It's the idea how we choose to play. So, how does an entrepreneur or yourself go about ensuring that the outcomes that you've predicted, yeah, actually show up, and then you can call it a success?
So I think you definitely have to test it. Like you have to be willing to test and willing to try and willing to fail and willing to do again and go again. A lot of this conversation that we're having, like I'm using the brides as a very specific
For sure.
instance, but a lot of that comes from trial and error. A lot of that comes from doing a lot of weddings, hundreds of weddings over all of that time, and figuring out by say wedding 15 or wedding 20 what the strategy is going to be pretty much for the rest of them. And as well, you have to build into your strategy, um, flexibility, because you cannot approach everybody's not the same. Everybody's not going to be the same. Every client is not going to be the same. So you not only do your avatars matter, like your personas matter, but you have to get down to the granular level of like, who is this person? What is this person? And how am I delivering value for this person? Right? And On high ticket items, it's significantly easier because you're dealing with literally one person at a time. On smaller items, you're going to be dealing with multiple people. But again, if the person's only desire is really to suck some Kool-Aid juice out of a bag, and you are providing ice pops, then you are the right person for you're the right person for this particular situation. You have to ensure that what you're delivering is good value for money, even if it's just $1 for what for an ice pop. You have to ensure that what you're delivering in with that is a great service that's tied into, okay, am I making sure that the person buying this actually wants this, actually needs this, right? That this is what they need at that particular time. If that becomes your strategy, then executing your plan is going to be super easy.
Understood. I mean, gone are the days when a Kool-Aid ice pop was 25 cents, right?
I'm
I
telling
can
you,
still remember. I
exactly.
can still remember.
But but in the same token, if you came and you wanted to spend 25 cents on an ice pop, there's no point in me trying to sell you $1 ice pop. I might as well send you to my neighbor who's selling a $25 ice pop, right? I
Yeah,
have a
yeah.
$1 ice pop. That's what I sell.
So I think, and that's actually a good intro to my next question because
Hmm.
it's really going to be focusing around your target audience, and understanding who your target audience is. Now, you
Right.
mentioned customer avatars, and I just kind of want you to get into, explain this briefly what a customer avatar is. But also, once you get into doing and operating, what were the cues that you were looking for in terms of really defining who that customer avatar is? I know you
Hmm.
mentioned the wedding example, yeah,
Right.
and you seemed very confident in the wife, yeah. So like we go to the bride all the time,
Listen,
Like
I've,
what's the thought
I've
process behind that? How did you come about that?
I've only sold a wedding to one groom, and We sold hundreds of weddings in my time, right? In one year, I think the most weddings we ever did in a year was 54. We did 54 weddings. There are 52 weeks in a year. So we
Yeah,
did more than a wedding a week, right?
yeah, that's cool.
And so there's, and literally only one groom was heavily involved in the decision making with regards to the photography. Right? It was pretty evident who my client was. So in a lot of other instances, it may not necessarily be as clear, right? With Awesome Cocoa, it's not quite as clear. It's not a simple matter of like, well, just sell to the women. That's not really how it works. Um, what that became was very much figuring out who are the people who need cocoa, not the people who want cocoa, not the people who kind of like cocoa, like the people who really need cocoa, the people who feel like, and I'll give you the perfect example. I can say his name because he's a good friend of mine. Robert Geist is somebody who loves cocoa and loves it to the point where when he would purchase from me, he has never purchased a single box from me, right? Um, but he's the sort of person who really wants his cocoa to be rich, and he'll tell you about the characteristics that he wants from his box of cocoa. So there's a lot of information that you can glean from somebody like that, and perhaps all of it is not the same way with every single customer, but there's a lot of that I can use, right? A lot of those descriptions that I can use that talk about not just what my product is, but also speak to the type of person who is interested in this sort of product. I wasn't what Awesome Cocoa sells is not necessarily just cocoa. We do sell cocoa, but cocoa is the bedrock of the product. But it's about the presentation of the product, right? How that product looks. Because one of the problems that I had, the problem that I was trying to solve, was not having to buy cocoa from a little piece of plastic in the supermarket. That just didn't work for me, and it wasn't something that was attractive to me. So I decided that I was going to try to reimagine how our cocoa can be packaged and presented. And then there's the whole unboxing experience with the cocoa. When you open it up, there's like a little yellow flap and a little brown flap, and it feels more like a premium product, right? That was
Yeah.
kind of the point. So it was very interesting for me to find who are the people who are going to really need this product. There are a lot of people who bought the product because it was my product. And they tried it for the first time, and some of them never came back. It doesn't mean that they didn't like the product. It's just they're not really cocoa people, right? That could
Yeah.
that could genuinely be the case. Whereas the people who really, really love cocoa kept coming back. And they kept coming back because the cocoa was very good, because they loved the experience, because it was something that was very easy for them to share with their friends, with their family. It was something that was very giftable. So it's a matter of understanding, one, what are you actually providing, and understanding who you're providing it to, and what the value of it is to them. That's, I think, is the magic key.